I am Graham, a trucker who reads a lot of books. My goal is to be a full-time author and illustrator. You're helping me get there by watching this video, so thanks. Now on to the video. I came into work like 2.5 hours early to get a major jump start on my route to take the early out. And of course they asked me like when I was done to go help another driver. I said no. I was a little bit lippier than that. We'll see if I get in trouble for that. But general frustrations came to a head. It's the weekend. Here I am. All right, this is my review of Cirque du Freak by Darren Shan. First time I heard about this series was probably '08 or '09 when I was working at a bookstore. And this like 12-year-old kid, I mean, he was 12 on the old end. He comes to the back where we've got the customer service desk, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for these books." And he had seen the title printed out, but he didn't know how to say it. And I can't remember. He said like "CIRQUE du Freak" or something. I was like, what the heck is this? And like I was able to kind of do some backward searching and found, oh, Cirque du Freak. I'd never heard of this series, and it's some kid that goes and finds like this creepy carnival that's traveling through town, kind of in a Ray Bradbury way, which again, I go back to the idea that he was the granddaddy of this creepy carnival story, but I digress. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And we didn't carry it, but I was able to direct him to another store that would. So, yay, I heard about that. And then it seems like within a very short period of time, there was a trailer for a movie coming out, it would have been fall of '09. Thought, oh, okay, I'll check this out. I was big into writing and reading YA at the time. That's what I was trying to get published in. I was still like on the hunt for an agent and publishers at that time. So I went and checked out the movie. It was fine, like good Halloween movie. Had the aesthetic for it and everything. I think there was one part that was really miscast, and the rest of it just seemed like, yeah, this is, of all the movies to come out this year, this is definitely one of them. Like, it was fine, but kind of forgettable. And this was right around the time when like the YA film adaptation glut was hitting its peak and was going to start slowing down. Like if you had a moderately successful young adult series, chances are a studio would option it and make it into a movie. And that's what happened here. The film is a compilation of the first two books in the series, from what I understand. And I read the first book a couple of years ago and forgot about it. And then I grabbed it this week and listened to it from the library, and I was like, wait a minute, this all sounds really familiar. And I went and checked Goodreads, and like, oh yeah, I had already read it. The premise is that the main character, his name is Darren Shan. He's in middle school, comes from a good, stable two-parent family. His best friend is kind of a troublemaker kid being raised by a single mom, and they're into horror stuff. Like his friend Steve has this really cool collection of comic books with all this stuff about werewolves and vampires in it. And Darren is completely fascinated and intrigued by spiders, while Steve is completely fascinated and intrigued by vampires. And then while they're just going about doing their teenage boy thing, like some dark and creepy traveling circus comes to town, and they find out about it, and they get tickets, and they go and check it out, and it's kind of like a horrific scene. There's actually like monsters there that'll bite people's hands off, but you can sew them back on, and they'll eventually heal. Like dark, creepy magic type stuff, presented in a way that's like it's just slightly over the line for what you would think is probably palatable for this target audience. But one of the main attractions there is this vampire guy who has this really talented pet spider that will like dance and stuff if you play flute music. The vampire's name is Mr. Krebsley, and the spider's name is Madame Octa. And so of course like Steve is obsessed with the vampire, and he's like, dude, turn me into a vampire. I want to be a vampire. My life sucks. And Darren just wants to steal the spider and have it for a pet. And he steals it, and it ends up like biting Steve, but Darren like needs to figure out what to do to save him, so he's got to go like tell Mr. Krebsley what he did, and Krebsley's like, all right, well, if you want me to save your friend, you've got to become my new assistant. Vampire's assistant or vampire's apprentice? That's the name of the second book, but it's all rolled together into one in the movie. And so Darren agrees to do it, and in order for that to work, Mr. Crepsley has to fake Darren's death and then like fake bury him, and well, real bury him, and then dig him up. And he can't have any contact with his old friends, his old family, his old life. And when they're having the funeral for Darren, Steve sees him and he sees markings on him that he's like, wait a minute, you've been turned into a vampire. You're not really dead. And he's mad at being betrayed by his friend, even though Darren did it to save Steve from spider venom. And anyway, Steve, being the bad kid, he goes and teams up with a different vampire. And frick, I remember this in the movie. So Steve was played, I don't know the name of the kid who played Darren. Steve was played by Josh Hutcherson. This was at a time when, like, if you were adapting a YA or middle grade movie and you needed a boy, you cast Josh Hutcherson, right? Like, he was in this, he was in Hunger Games, he was in Bridge to Terabithia, probably in a bunch of other things. Like, he's in his 30s now. He still looks like he's 15. When they turned him into a vampire, they just, like, gave him this Walmart leather jacket and put some gel in his hair, and his hair was like spiky. I was like, ooh, I'm bad now. I was like, what is this? Anyway, like, the boys become mortal enemies, and it kind of fades into the black from there. That's what the book does. I haven't seen the movie since then. It came out in 2009. I went and saw it by myself because I was sad and lonely and didn't have a girlfriend. She probably wouldn't have gone to see that movie anyway. And I think, like, the one thing that really made it stick in my memory, though, is that it's one of a few movies I know of that has Red Right Hand in it by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, which is the quintessential Halloween song for me. It's not exclusively Halloween coded, as they say, but it's so perfectly atmospheric. If you've never heard it, you probably have heard it, even if you don't know what it is. Look up Red Right Hand by Nick Cave and just give it a listen. It's a longer song, but it's slow and brooding and just perfect. There's a couple of other movies. I think it's in Hellboy as well. Hellboy from 2004. Just perfect. The miscasting was that the vampire guy to whom Darren becomes an assistant in the movie is played by John C. Reilly. And I was like, you cast John C. Reilly if you want him to be, like, goofy or endearing. You don't have him be like a dark, alluring vampire guy. It's just, it's such a weird casting. Nevertheless, he played the role well. I just don't think that he had, like, the aura that he needed to play an immortal vampire type character. I think there were a couple of other cameos in there, like some bit parts. Willem Dafoe was in it because it's a moderately creepy movie, and so I think the law says that Willem Dafoe has to be in it. And then I want to say Selma Hayek was in it. There were a couple of others. The movie is fine. Watch it with your friends, have a laugh. And the book is just fine too. But I know that some of my viewers have young boy readers in their family and stuff. And I think, like, if they're looking for something that's a little bit spookier and it's got slightly more edge to it than your average middle grade book, as far as, like, creepy action, even a little bit of, like, violent stuff, check it out. There's not really anything, like, super objectionable in it. Like, when Darren and Steve sneak off to go to the CIRQUE Du Freak, they see, like, a werewolf that gets cut loose and it jumps into the audience and it bites this lady's hand off, but it's, like, actually bitten off and stuff, but they're able to sew it back on and, like, the magic will heal it. And it's like, oh, that's it's kind of intense for a kid's book. But the author is Irish, and I've just tended to notice that a lot of European authors they're more prone to go into, like, those edgier and grittier areas with their writing than you'd find out here in the Americas. But anyway, it's a book that's fun enough, and the movie is, like, you can survive one watch easily. It's not painful. It's just it's very much aimed at an age group, and it works for them. So yeah, there's that. CIRQUE Du Freak. Thank you for watching that. To help the channel, check out my books on Amazon. Buy one, read it, tell me what you think. For October, I recommend Sleepless Hollow, a fantastic sci-fi romp with guns, ghosts, and gonzo action sequences. You can also subscribe to my Substack, where I do more detailed book reviews and longer-running projects, some of which is paywalled. Drive safe. See you out there.